Okay, so the third and final presidential debate of the 2016 cycle has just concluded. I thought it would be interesting to make an immediate response video, um, perhaps because it won't be exhaustive and perhaps because it is just an impulsive, on the spot, immediate post-mortem video. Um, I have to say, I missed the first 20 minutes, which was annoying. These debates are always in the early hours of the morning UK time, so I was resting for a while. And I set my alarm, but unfortunately, yeah, I missed the first 20 minutes. Um, but what I did see, I saw probably about just over two-thirds of the debate, was rough and tumble, more so than I expected because I thought this format with both candidates sitting down as opposed to the town hall format would be a bit more tame. Not quite. It was rocky. And there were certainly notable moments. I will say they're just doing the analysis now. I'll just show you the TV screen. This is CNN. They're just waiting for their poll. I have to say, I don't trust CNN. I do believe they're extremely biased towards the campaign. Okay, but having said that, um, there's been a lot of talk in recent days coming from Mr. Trump himself. The election is rigged. Now, I do want to discuss that a little bit as well as tonight's event because it's very, very important. Um, Firstly, I think Chris Wallace done a very good job. It's not easy to monitor these things, and I think he done. I think he got the balance pretty good. No one can accuse him of bias tonight. It's very rare that I defend someone from Fox News because I think Fox News is also very biased, pro-Republican. But I think Chris Wallace done a very good job. He asked both candidates tough questions. He intervened when necessary. And I haven't spoken much about the moderators, but I think he done a very good job. Trump can't turn around and say that Chris Wallace was biased, because Clinton was asked tough questions. Now, regarding this whole issue of bias, and I'll come back to the debate in a minute, but this is important. If it's about media bias, then Trump has a point because CNN's reporting of this has been appalling, insofar as they have bombarded cyberspace, for example, with negative stories about Trump, and only now and again do they have a story about Clinton. And I never ever criticize journalists for reporting news, but you do start to see an agenda when it is such trivial things. And I'm not talking about the serious allegations. I'm talking about the way in which they're doing it. For example, they had one video that had this silly, chilling music, and Trump sort of in the last debate Trump, uh, wandering behind Clinton, and I mean that is just trash journalism. The way they were reporting that, if anyone saw it, know what I mean. So certainly, if he was alleging that against CNN, he'd have a point. But when he makes this blanket statement about the media as a whole being against him, Fox News hasn't exactly given Hillary Clinton an easy ride. Not that they should, but they haven't. They've been talking about the emails for months. And contrary to the claims, they are mainstream media. So CNN's biased, but you can't say there's bias across the board against Mr. Trump. That borders on the most absurd conspiracy theories. Part of the debate tonight, Mr. Trump was asked very directly, would you accept the outcome of this election either way? He said, we'll wait and see. That's unprecedented for a presidential election. And it's potentially going to give American democracy a bad image because if he keeps pushing these things, I think those who hate America are going to just say, oh, look, your presidential candidate says it's corrupt. To make this allegation that there's corruption is a very big claim, especially before the election. And as President Obama pointed out, when you have states that have large Republican bases, such as Florida, I'm aware it's a swing state, but it does have a lot of Republican counties. to suggest that they would be biased against Trump is a bit far fetched. This is a huge claim. If the election turns out to be very, very close, I don't think it will, but if it turns out to be very, very close, and there's a lot of question marks, then maybe Mr. Trump can talk about this. But to make these sort of sweeping claims before the election is absurd. And I think it just distracts from his talking points. I will say I think tonight was Trump's strongest debate. I think he inevitably was going to be attacked with all the allegations that have been coming up. Um, I think he done, I think he had a good performance overall, insofar as he managed to stay on focus for the most part. But like I say, he got into classic Trump mode by, there was one point towards the end of the debate, he said, she's a very nasty woman. I mean, again, this is classic Trump. It just is unprecedented. Not that Clinton was particularly polite about Donald either. I mean, she gave, and that's a point I'd like to raise actually, in terms of Donald Trump's attitudes towards women. Um, Certainly, there's a lot of areas where there would be legitimate question marks about the way he's spoken about women. But the caveat to that, or the other side of that, is that some of the women, and I'm not talking about the women who've made accusations against him, but some of the women he's been in disputes with, have been just as rude to Donald Trump. Rosie O'Donnell, for example, I've watched those videos, and I thought maybe there was something in it, but firstly, she started those back and forths, and she was very rude about Donald Trump. So it works both ways, and I think, frankly, Clinton's playing up the feminist card a little bit by sort of latching onto the women's vote, because women uh, have been said to watch these debates more than men. So I think she is sort of latching onto the feminist narrative there to some extent. Trump fired back with the issue around Clinton's trustworthiness. Like I say, this is only an immediate post-mortem analysis. I don't intend this to be exhaustive. I think Trump probably had his best performance. I don't think it'll be enough to win him the White House. I think he has damaged his campaign beyond repair at this point with his conspiracy theories, and I just think it's been a disaster, quite frankly. Put it this way: in any other year, if Clinton was running against, let's say, an average Republican candidate, if I could put it that way, say she was running against a John Kasich or even a Mike Pence, I think she would be in really hot water, because I think they would exploit the whole email situation and her trustworthiness without running into serious controversies of their own. But because Trump is such a polarizing and controversial candidate, he hands it to her on a plate in a sense. So in a sense, I wouldn't say is getting off the hook, but it's quite easy for her to focus on all of his flaws. I don't agree with those who say that personality isn't relevant. I think it is. For the most powerful job in the world, I think temperament is important. Remember, these people will have their finger on the nuclear button. So I think temperament is important. And I think Trump has proven time and time again he's very thin skinned. If he's going to get into public debates with journalists, with models, etc., etc., how is he going to handle a hostile world leader? This is a legitimate question. Now, Hillary Clinton has been under fire many times. She generally doesn't respond the way Trump does. She defends herself, she denies it, but I think she has better temperament. I will say that. I think she's got much better temperament. So, in conclusion, I think Trump had his strongest debate performance. I won't comment too much about Clinton's debate performance tonight on the grounds that I don't think it was that different from one and two. She stuck to her talking points. She was on the attack. Um, she came across as a little repetitive at times in terms of repeating some of the things she said. And like I say, tapping into the feminist narrative. I'm not so sure if that's the right approach. So tonight it's a toss up. I think Trump had his best performance under the circumstances. Clinton was classic Clinton. I mean, she's an immaculate politician. She knows how to operate. She's not trusted, but she is a very, very skilled politician. Even her critics, I think, would agree to that. So yeah, it's interesting. Let me know your thoughts. Um, A final word, and I probably should say this at this point. With these things, I always try to evaluate whose side I'm on. Overall, I'm probably more politically aligned to Hillary Clinton because traditionally I've been more pro-Democrat. But honestly, I'm really undecided about this one. I do think Trump is a very serious problem as a candidate. I think his temperament's a major problem. Incidentally, the riot in Chicago came up. He accused Clinton of that. There are legitimate questions about the far left infiltrating that, but Trump can't exactly say he has been. I saw some of his early rallies. I was watching them earlier. Instead of just letting the security get on with the work, he encourages his supporters to rough up protesters. That's unheard of. No one can dispute Trump as a polarizing figure. Okay, Hillary is as well, but Trump is great at playing the victim. But where it's true that the far left has targeted him, early in this cycle, it's irrefutable that he stirred things up as well at his rallies. That's totally irrefutable. So it's a bit of give and take, I think, and that's really unfortunate for the United States. Um, I'm not doomy and gloomy. I believe I know many American people, many of my viewers are very pessimistic about the future either way. I would say America's been through hard times before, um, and it survived. So I'm not too pessimistic about the future for America. I don't think any single president can just, damage the country so much that it's beyond return. And that's one of the beauties about the American system, the fact there are term limits. Sometimes I wonder, do we need that in the UK? We have a situation where, although we have elections, in theory, a prime minister could stay in power for a very, very long time. Sometimes I wonder, should we have term limits? I'm going to round up this video soon, but yeah, there's a lot of talking points to be made. I'm sure I'll watch this again and there'll be things I want to say. I think Chris Wallace done a good job. It was interesting viewing. And that concludes it. I think at this point Hillary Clinton is almost certainly going to win the election. I'd be surprised if she doesn't. Just with the way things are going, I think people are kind of thinking, okay, she's not trustworthy, but her temperament puts her in position. Trump supporters, of course, will say we don't care about the personality thing. Hillary's not trustworthy. I will say though, this idea that Trump is trustworthy, I think he's flip flopped in a lot of things. I think he's been inconsistent on a lot of things. And anyway, back to my own viewpoint. I'm not going to outright endorse Hillary Clinton um, because I do have a lot of issues about her trust, and I don't like the fact she's tapped into the feminist thing, especially early in the campaign. I think she's a much better leader in terms of her temperament, in terms of her experience. I think it's absurd. You can have someone running for the most powerful job in the world has never held political office. I think that's a major, major issue, and I don't know why it hasn't been brought up more. Being a successful businessman is not the same as being a world leader. So probably a more pro Clinton, but I totally, totally respect the views of Americans who are not pro Clinton. I respect what Clinton has done on the issue of bringing up gun violence. I won't say I'm on the fence with that one. I'm very, very pro gun regulation. And I don't agree with those who say she wants to take away guns. I don't think there's any evidence for that. She's repeatedly said she will respect the Second Amendment, but it's about regulation. So I do respect her for that. Um, I think she has shown more compassion. Trump will dispute that, but you know, um, like I say, because of his personality, because of his temperament, he's handed a lot to her on a plate in terms of what she can attack him on. Now, for right or wrong, Trump has turned this into a reality TV show. And I'm not saying that Clinton has been perfect. I'm not saying that she hasn't, hit low points in the campaign because she has. But I think she's done enough to win this. We'll see what happens. Pollsters have been wrong. But I think she's going to get very comfortable election victory. Too early to say whether that's good or bad. I'm not going to outright endorse her. I'm going to make another video on dynasty in American politics, especially looking at the Clintons and the Bushes. I think that's a very interesting talking point. So there you have it. Let me know your thoughts, and please keep it civil.